We're aiming for a 5 o'clock finish, and there's a couple of things I'd like to do. I was going to speak about the fact that our stories here have shown individual passion that has converted through a product, passion that has resulted in a business. My particular passion is in fact a region, and I think it's quite interesting the way many of the things that are around passions of individual businesses can also be attributed to regions. I live in Langhorne Creek, as does my husband Barry, and that community has embraced us. So we went from being, I went from being a city girl to being a regional person, where I both fell in love with, and I think the community of Langhorne Creek fell in love with us. Langhorne Creek, for those of you who are not as familiar as I'd like you to be with the region, is not too far from here, and it's one of Australia's premier wine regions. It was always a fairly prosperous community. Beautiful soils, has grown wine since 1850. Quite successful, innovative, wonderful people who in fact moved into the wine business with enthusiasm and vigour. The wine industry then underwent some significant changes and plantings increased significantly. We then faced a series of what I call disasters, and there are three sort of disasters, I think. One of them is natural disasters that you're familiar with. It's called that Australian bogeyman, drought. Drought is particularly difficult all throughout Australia, but when you live at the very end of the River Murray, drought is particularly damaging. Langhorne Creek suffered drought, and it suffered both water shortages and water declines. And it's not until you go overseas and to other places that you realise how much we are defined by water in this nation. And I draw to mind things that John talked about our affinity and relationship with the land and our need to nurture it. Drought had a particularly difficult effect, which then led to some financial responses called building a pipeline. The pipeline was terrific for Langhorne Creek, but in fact Langhorne Creek primary producers contributed $10 million of their own money into that pipeline. $10 million in a small community is a large amount of money. So many businesses had a complete change in their debt to equity structure. They needed to invest in the pipeline to remain viable producers, but what was previously positive cash flows were put under further stress. Just to top it off, we then had the global financial crisis. So another crisis came, and that combined with, shall we say, a great corporatisation of wine ownership, wine marketing and wine sales changed the dynamics of the business. So where Langhorne Creek had focused on producing quality wine and supplying them through a value chain to major producers, consolidation and business amalgamation among those, to the point where we have only really 4 major wine buyers, meant that our lack of regional profile and the fact that many producers were great producers other than wine producers changed the entire dynamics of production. That is a really difficult situation, and when you combine that with the fact that Australian producers in many ways have to face the third set of crises, which I would argue are an avalanche of business compliance charges. We've talked about the importance of taxation regimes in other areas, for example, but the cost of doing business in Australia through whether it's regulation or labelling laws or compliance of all different sorts is indeed testing the financial capability of many of our businesses, because those compliance costs are increasing. So from a happy beginning, a series of crises, but the twist in this tale is to say, just like all the fabulous case studies we've heard about individual businesses, family businesses responding to change and changing, we are working very hard in Langhorne Creek to bring about some changes which are about increasing our profile, increasing tourism to the region, and increasing people's understanding of our region, our long family history, and our ability to get shorter value chains between our customers and us as providers. So what we are doing is we're investing in restoring and developing a visitor centre, an industry hub, some very, I hope, innovative programs. So we are a region that's taking on board some of the changes through both IT and other sorts of frameworks. So the innovations we are engaging in are things like amalgamation. So our Grape Growers Committee and our Wine Committee has amalgamated. We have decided to stand up and be heard about other issues. We've decided to take our future in our hands and develop greater recognition, efficiencies, the hub, and improve our marketing, which will help our capacity to negotiate and manage more successfully in the world. So the business lessons that we've shared today and the insights about passion, about innovation, about leadership, are all just as applicable to regions as they are to individual businesses. So in bringing the inspiration part of today's session, I truly feel inspired. It's been absolutely fabulous to be part of this day. I think this is terrific. But what I'd like to do is do a short presentation for you about how we can innovate and improve by effectively and constructively engaging with the... Sorry? Yeah. Connie reminded me that we didn't thank the panel sufficiently to say to everybody. So can we please thank our panel? Good teams are made of people with diverse skills, and that's terrific. Thank you. So we are quickly going to, I think, move on to the next presentation. And this is about using the internet. It's been fantastic to be here today, but we also know that time is short and the opportunities are endless. So there's a short little piece of information that we're going to share with you about learning together and the resources that are available to us to learn about almost everything. Here are some crazy websites that you can learn all sorts of things about, how to do all sorts of crazy things. Down, thank you. So the internet is both a powerful resource and a fabulously good way to waste time unless you're focused. There are more mad things on the internet than you can almost credit people for. Connie thought that we might like to do embroidery. No, we didn't. How to fix... Here's the American connection, a leaking faucet. We don't have those, Connie, we only have taps. But really positive things about how to engage well with your kids, fabulous resources that can be used for constructive things, practical things that every girl needs to know, how to fix her bicycle, and a whole series of incredibly useful issues that we have touched on today about how to get started with a whole series of useful things. So we've put together a series of these website references which we think will be helpful for you in some way, which will be on your USB stick, which you get to take away with you.